525,600 minutes, 525,000 moments, oh dear. 525,600 minutes. How do you measure a year? In daylights, in sunsets, in midnights, in cups of coffee, in inches, in miles, and laughter and strife. In 525,600 minutes, how do you measure a year in the life?
Like to suggest or make any note about the values that we have to live by, like the valuable values. If there's any valuable values that we have to live by and keep in mind in entire life, then which values will be
Like
in that list?
You know.
Like hope, peace, and love.
Yes. Yes. Well, you know, I would place near the top of my list of values kindness.
Wow.
Kindness. And I read some years ago, I read a novel by a Russian writer about the Soviet Union in World War II. It's a very powerful novel, but also an indictment of the Soviet system of Stalinism and cruelty, and in the novel there would be discussions of different kinds of social systems, capitalism, socialism, this system, that system, and the author of the book, at a certain point, speaking through one of his characters, says you can talk about social systems, you can talk about this socialism and capitalism, he says, but the one thing, he says, that to me means everything is kindness. People being kind to one another, you know, being nice to other people.
Right.
Okay. Nice
being nice to other people. Being generous. And warm-hearted.
Well,
Warm-hearted.
You know, generosity. If I have more than you and you need something, I must be generous. You know, through kindness, generosity, niceness, sensitivity towards other people, thinking about other people, looking at the world through their eyes, and because sometimes you may say, well, this is the way I see it, you see. But you have to think, how does this person see it? You know, and I may think, I'm doing the right thing. But this person, this other person, doesn't see it that way. And I may say, I'm not doing anything to hurt this person. But this person feels hurt. And so you have to think, no, not only, you know, what I believe, I have to think, look through this person's mind, this person's heart, this person's sensibility. No, I think this is part of being human, having empathy towards with other people, sympathy with other people, you know. And hope is very important, of course, because without hope, you do not have the will, the energy to live or to do anything good. You have surrendered your energy, surrendered your will, surrendered your life, and it is very easy to understand why people don't have hope, because you look around at the world, terrible things are going on. And we all know this. We talk to people who don't have hope because they see wars going on. They see people being treated badly, and it's very easy to lose hope. But I think that a sense of history is a very important thing to have. Because if you have a sense of history, you know that there have been times in the past, many times, when people have lost hope, and then they discovered that change can take place. And in the United States, you might say black people for a long time had no hope. Everything was the same. Nothing changed for them. But there were a few people who had hope, and they began to act. And when they acted, that spread to other people. And soon they could see the possibility of hope. So hope is very important, because if you have hope, you will act, you will move, you will engage with people. And if you don't have hope, well, you are allowing the world to go on exactly as it has been. And we don't want that. We want a new world.
So is there any way out or alternative system that we can overcome the capitalism or materialism?
Well, of course, the United States is the biggest example of the capitalist system, and supposedly the most successful example of the capitalist system. And it is a good lesson for people to look at the example of the United States, because on the one hand, the capitalist system has been most successful in the United States. The United States has the greatest wealth in the world. But on the other hand, in this very wealthy country, there are 2 million people who don't have a place to live. 2 million homeless people. There are 40 million people who don't have health insurance. 1 out of every 5 children in the United States grows up in poverty, poor. In the United States, if you walk from one part of a city to another part of the city, you will see the difference. Here in Boston, you can walk through parts of Boston and say, wow, everybody is rich. Everybody lives well. But if you walk into other parts of the city, if you keep walking, you will soon find yourself in an area where it looks as if a war has taken place. The buildings are all, old, and people are living in places where they don't have heat in the winter, and the kids don't have enough to eat. So the United States is an example of capitalism, which is successful in creating huge amounts of wealth. But where the wealth is badly distributed, the wealth is not equalized. And that is a lesson about the nature of capitalism. And so it is very important for instance, for young people in the United States who grow up, perhaps they grow up in a prosperous family, in a family that has everything they need. Very important for these young people to leave, to go, to travel, to go here, to go there, and to see that there are other people who don't have this. And so, capitalism is a system that has been successful for a small number of people, but not successful for other people, and certainly not successful for people all over the world. You know, because here's the United States with 4% of the population of the world, with 25% of the wealth of the world. So we have to think about new ways of living, and people have to think about cooperative ways of living, sharing things, and the capitalistic spirit of competition should be seen as something that is poisonous to the human being. It sets you against everybody else. It makes you a narrow individualist, and because you think only of profit for yourself. And you know, people, there's an opposition between the capitalist system and the family. And people like the family. They wouldn't like it if in their family, the father and the mother and the children were all in competition with one another, and one person in the family was living well, and another person in the family had no shoes, you see.
Yeah.
And so people have to think, you know, that the family is a good model for the way people should be in the world, you know.
So, what would you like to say to the young idealist of this time?
The young
Idealist.
idealists.
No, like us, or
Just like us.
we act for the better world, the struggle for the reality. Please encourage me. We will keep in mind your words. I will travel and for my life. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, I think that, you know, people like you know, and young people who have ideals, you know, I would say, one, do not let any news of the real world interfere with your ideals. Do not let anything that happens, no matter how terrible it is, do not allow it to make you lose your ideals. And so long as you keep those ideals, you know, you can never be imprisoned. It's like people in prison. There are people in prison. And how do they survive under the terrible conditions of prison? Because they have an ideal in their mind, which they will refuse to give up, you see. And it makes life not just bearable, not just tolerable, but it makes life interesting and beautiful. And it brings you together with other people, which is, I mean, ultimately the human being is a social being. The human being cannot live by himself or herself. And the human being needs more than anything else love and affection and friendship. And when you have ideals, the bonds of friendship and love are very, very powerful. You don't have such bonds when you are in a company. You don't have bonds with the people who work with you for the same profit motive, or you don't have bonds with the people with whom you are competing in the university. No. But if you are working together with people who just have the same ideals, you see, there's a wonderful warm feeling among you, between you and them, and it makes life worth living.
I think so too.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that we often think of these lofty values of love and peace as something, that's aspired to its way beyond, the flawed human being. And for me, and this is really the encouraging thing for me is that if you look at all the research on human nature, whether it's lab research or observing people in sociology and anthropology, that you learn that most people have these very profound needs for cooperation, empathy, fairness. And so the encouraging thing for me is that we are not asking people to change their nature, but to really acknowledge these deep needs they have, that our culture is telling us, oh no, you can't express that because you've got to go make money and compete. And so you really are encouraging people to be more themselves. You're not encouraging people, oh, you've got to change and be a better person. You're saying, this is happiness, expressing this works. This is not some idealized thing, but it is also learned. This comes back, it's this irony that it's natural, but it also is learned. I mean, it sounds contradictory, but it's not, that we have these deep needs, but to express them, especially in society telling us no, 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 then they have to be learned from early age, and how we bring up our children. And so I think that is one key part of it. And then the other thing that Anna and I came to after we traveled to write Hope's Edge, and that is very much in the book Hope's Edge, and I think we end with this message that hope is not something that you seek in evidence out there. Oh, I can prove to you that this is going to work. It is what we become. It is who we are when we are engaged, when we are striving to push our own personal limits and to find others to work with and to envision and to bring about something new in the world. So hope is then an action, like we almost named Hope's Edge or almost named this book Democracy as a Verb. Well, hope is a verb. Yes, it's a feeling, but it's not a state of being. It's an action. And I think that, so you're really not asking people, oh, come carry the burden of saving the world. But you're really saying, this is, yes, it's challenging. Yes, you'll have your ups and downs, but you will always be alive. You won't ever go to sleep. You will always be alive, and you'll always be learning, and you'll always be meeting interesting people and having new questions. And I mean, what is better than that?
We want for you advice for us what is justice, and so very important question.
Yeah. For me, justice is first and foremost that every human being be treated equal, irrespective of caste, class, religion, gender, age. That the humanity is equal. An old person might be totally crippled, but they also deserve caring. A little baby might not be able to look after themselves, but they need the attention of society, and they need the institutions in society in order to look after them. For me, second aspect of justice is the recognition that every human being needs dignity, needs meaning. So one is equality, but the second is meaning. And meaning comes from being. And being comes from doing. So every human being should have a relevance in society. Over time, with globalization, industrialism, and all of these structures, we have created a society where 80% people are not needed. And in the rich countries, they get unemployment welfare. In the poor countries, they get nothing. This means creating a society of throwaway people. That's unjust. For me, unemployment is a very mild word. Basically, you're wasting the talents of society. Because everyone has a talent. someone can sing, someone can nurture someone else, someone else can do brilliant software programs, someone else can write a book, someone else can teach the children. Everyone has something to do. Yeah? Now, when I look at universities now, in India, in America, probably in Korea, they're teaching only 3 things. Business management, as if everyone will have a business. Biotechnology, as if the only biology we need to learn is how to do genetic engineering. And the third is information technology, as if every one of us will sit at computers. No, we need other skills. We need to know how to make a table like this. We need to know how to make a beautiful bookmark like this. These are skills. And justice means allowing people to exercise their creativity. And that element of justice has not entered the debate anywhere yet. And I think it's going to be the most important. Because human beings have been reduced to consumers. And the assumption then is, oh, everyone should have the right to consume. I had a debate with the Commerce Secretary of the United States before Seattle in Washington, D.C. And he was trying to say, freedom and democracy is anyone should be able to get anything at any point from anywhere in the world. And I was saying, no, freedom is for everyone to be able to make what they want to make, wherever they are. And the duty of governments is to ensure that the making, creation, production is not destroyed. Which is why we need protections. Which is why you need just like I need my skin to protect the rest of my body. A society needs a skin that decides what will go in and what will come out. Yeah? If you don't have a skin, you're finished. And free trade meant removing the skin of society. Yeah? Very painful, 200,000 farmers dead in India. 70% of Indian children malnourished because of globalization. 9% growth, but 70% children malnourished. That's injustice. Justice would be to recognize every child has a right to food. Finally, justice means every person has a right to the ecological space. And the ecological space means adequate water, adequate biodiversity, adequate air to breathe, all the contributions of nature that make life possible. And as I've written in Earth Democracy, in some of our ancient texts, we say, if you consume more than you need, you're stealing someone else's share. Either some other species' share, or some other human being's share, or the share of a future generation. If I take out too much water and leave underground aquifers empty, I'm taking water away from someone else, and I'm leaving no water for the future. That sharing of the limited resources of this beautiful planet, again, you've given me this beautiful book, Planet Earth, sharing these beautiful limited resources with equality is ecological justice. And within it is climate justice, within it is biodiversity justice, within it is water justice. And that's why, if you notice, my books are water democracy. I talk about water democracy. I talk about food democracy. All these are connected. A just sharing of the resources is also a sustainable utilization of the resources. And if you utilize resources within limits, America won't have to go to Iraq to fight a war.
If life is a river and your heart is a boat, I'm just like a water baby, baby, born to float. And if life is a wild wind that blows way on high, and your heart is Amelia, dying to fly, heaven knows no frontiers, and I've seen heaven in your eyes. man with his fingers on the ivory gates, where we sing all till dawn of our fears and our faith, and we stack all the dead men in self-addressed crates. In your eyes fades as the singing of a lark, and somehow this black night feels warmer for the spark, warmer for the spark, to hold us till the day when fear will lose its grip and heaven has its ways. Heaven knows no frontiers, and I've seen heaven in your eyes. If life is a rough band of brambles and nails, and your spirit's a slave to man's whips and man's chains, where you thirst and you hunger for justice and right, and your heart is a pure flame of man's constant night. In your eyes fades as the singing of a lark, that somehow this black night feels warmer for the spark, warmer for the spark, to hold us till the day when fear will lose its grip and heaven has its ways, and heaven has its ways, when all will harmonize, and you know it's in our hearts, the dream will realize. Heaven knows no frontiers, and I've seen heaven in your eyes. Heaven knows no frontiers, and I've seen heaven.